So the title of my article is The Struggles That Many Female Athletes Face. My research questions how do stereotypes associated with women of color affect their psychological resilience and coping strategies in competitive settings like physical sports. The outlines of my claims are first, how is psychological resilience and coping strategies key in sports? And then I'm gonna go over exactly how negative stereotypes affect the participation of sports and then how stereotypes affect female athletes' performance. My solutions that I have gathered is that negative stereotypes usually stem from an absence of knowledge, and if we have a more higher media exposure of diverse female athletes, then we can further combat this issue by giving more information exactly different female athletes from various regions. First, some general background is the history of negative stereotypes against female athletes. Ever since female athletes have been competing in sports, they've always undergo unfair advantages. And also, where does negative stereotypes stem from? According to Berg in 2002, they explain how ever since early evolution, males have always viewed females as a more inferior, and this had snowballed into our society of sports. So first, going on for my first claim, how psychological resilience and coping strategies are key in sports. Mental training leads to better performance. According to Yu et al., they explain how that many athletes who undergo mental training tend to have better performance in their in their sports. They also explain how that athletes who do not have mental training usually are linked with worse performance. And they also explain how that it also aids female athletes through hurdles. Rowan et al. Explains how that female athletes typically go through hurdles and much more various problems compared to their male counterparts because of the negative stereotypes that are inflicted on them. They explain how that having mental training could help them combat this. This image shows the relationship on how mental toughness or mental resilience could help first athletes, help them with their relationships and also their experience in their sports. Second, negative stereotypes affect the participation of sports. So according to Nico 2019, unfair advantages are caused because of negative stereotypes. They explain how that female athletes also would go through unfair wages and also unfair images of them throughout media because of these negative stereotypes of them being more deemed as like more boring and less competitive than male athletes. Also, sports being viewed as masculine influence female participation because many female athletes technically, when they're more successful in their sports, they tend to have more backlash on how they are seen as more masculine or gay or lesbian or just being seen as more man-like. For example, Serena Williams back at Indian Wells, she experienced racial slurs and also was called a man because of her image. And Pierce et al. Also explained how little representation discourage future female athletes. When young female athletes do not have a role model or someone that they can look up to in their areas of sports, they tend to not continue or pursue their sports because of their fear of failure. In this image, it shows two pro athletes in tennis and how they're depicted in media. In one side, you can see male athletes being depicted as more successful with his achievements here, while the other one, another pro female athlete in tennis, is displayed as more, how to say, seductive or maybe like more or less like successful. Stereotypes affect female performance. According to Red King 2015, they explained how that the negative stereotypes, because of these negative racial stereotypes, affect the performance of many athletes. For example, again, Serena Williams at her Indian Wells competition, where she faced multiple racial slurs because of the audience, she developed PTSD from that particular event. They also explained how that self-image also affect the performance of athletes. Self-image is very important for athletes because it helps them improve with their sports and help them know what areas they need to improve and what areas they have trouble in. And because of negative their self-image and also affect the way they perform. And you throw like a girl stereotypes are harmful. They explain how that they ran 2 test trials of two athletic groups, where in one group they introduced stereotypes saying that female athletes technically perform way worse than male athletes, and the other they didn't really tell them anything. And they explained how they saw a clear difference in their performance, where the ones that were influenced with stereotypes performed worse than the ones they didn't. This image represents 2 pro boxers. And the story behind them is that they won their match, but they received backlash because they were seen as more masculine. And because of that, many of them were kicked off from not being able to perform at the championship. So some solutions that I've gathered due to my research is that if we implement sports psychology principles onto female athletes, this could help them face the hurdles that they go through because of the media and also because of people. And also we should increase representation and have more exposure. Having more exposure could help people understand exactly why some female athletes have the build that they have or why they look the way they do, and also cause little to no major backlash because of looks. Some implication of solution. The first, my pros is that it would increase representation, also increase health benefits, and also it creates equal opportunities for many female athletes. Some cons is that diverse female athletes could be used for tokenism, where that their achievements aren't really used to show that female athletes are perform as well as male athletes, but actually they only focus on their diversity. And you can also do the opposite. According to UNECO, they explain how that media exposure could also cause more negative stereotypes like what they do to people in the Middle East. My limitation solution is that there's still gender bias in sports, and also there's also limited representation. We don't know if many of the news outlets or media outlets will even go with the plan of having more representation in sports. My conclusion is that first, mental training is very important to athletes, especially female athletes when they go through hurdles every day in their lives, racial stereotypes, and how they also go through many insults of being hypermasculine or not being able to perform well enough. And also, we also went over exactly how to solve this issue by increasing representation. These are my references.
Grace, what information did you need that you weren't able to find? How did you go about trying to locate it?
There wasn't a lot of so for my participation of sports for that claim, there wasn't really a lot of evidence that showed it. There was more evidence on how it improved actually, and I wanted to focus just the negative aspects. So how I combat this is that I decided to get evidence from I've decided to gather evidence and show that because of the little representations they have, especially in media, many of them weren't really interested in sports because they didn't really have that exposure.
Okay. And if you had more time, what additional research would you conduct related to the issue?
I think I would research more about the hate that they go through, because there's different types, especially the how they were facing hate crime. They were facing hate because of hypermasculinity and also being accused of being being part of the LGBTQ community. If I had more time, I would go more into research about that and how exactly that affected gay athletes and also just pretty much people in those communities.
Okay. Good job.